Hey everyone, Margarita here. I'm going to film this video today about the outcome of my workers' comp situation that finally got a court date all these years later. The injury began initially over 9 years ago from the first day I stepped foot in the building, and became very extreme about 2 years from there, although I was gone for a significant portion of that time in between there because I was actually not supposed to return. Now at this point I had been 100% self-employed for some years, was never planning on working for someone else ever again, and it was due to my mother's escapade of crimes in 2013 that led to, it eventually led to me going to work there. Numerous people's actions, but at the root was her criminal escapade in 2013 with all the large agencies she used to help her kidnap my older two kids, and several court systems and attorneys involved as well. So that's where it led to. And then I became extremely injured at the beginning of 2018, completely incapacitated. Basically for about three and a half years from that point forward, I very minimally, a couple handfuls of times, went to work. I couldn't do anything at all, couldn't get from room to room in my house basically that entire time. But because I'm self-employed and because the injury is internal, it's an illusion because nobody realizes there's anything wrong. But I also could not string sentences together properly. So because of the environment where my main form of self-employment was, it was over everybody's head. Nobody was thinking that, nobody would have any reason to believe there would be anything wrong with me. So I just mostly kept to myself, did not communicate with anyone in depth too deeply, just kind of stayed off to the side a little bit and would make large sums of money very carefully, and I would wait for the right time just to kind of to come in and do this, and I did it on the busiest nights possible. It was very minimal. I did it just enough to keep everything running, and if I had not done that, my son and I would have been dead back in 2019. So eventually what happened is COVID happened, and since I made quite a bit of money just in those few times, a couple handfuls of times that I did get myself there, and I didn't even get myself there, somebody else drove me, because I couldn't drive either. I could barely get from point A to point B 5 minutes down the road. So due to that, the COVID pay is what allowed me to treat every day and pay the bills and continue keeping everything running. But yeah, I was completely incapacitated for quite some time. Did nothing but treatment and back all of COVID, which when I got the COVID pay for about 1.5 years. So it ran right into that, and that's how I managed to survive and keep everything going, because what I was doing initially, I knew if something crazy didn't happen, I still wasn't going to survive. I knew I couldn't hold on much longer, because I was walking a very fine line between life and death. I had extreme lack of oxygen to the brain, overloaded with carbon monoxide to an extreme degree, several inches of space between my brain and my skull. The back left side of my brain was sagging and throbbing continuously. There was knots of carbon monoxide tightly binded and loaded up inside my brain as well. So that's kind of how I made it through the extreme portion. And once COVID was over, I had done so much treatment, I was finally able to just still bare minimally work enough to keep everything running. But however, how I'm self-employed, I generate large sums of money in very short periods of time. So that's how I was able to do that. So if that's not what I was already doing all those years prior, that would have never been able to begin at that point. And if I was not doing that, we wouldn't have been alive either, because we had to spend $165,000 out of pocket at the Oxford Center, which is now closed down due to the hyperbaric chamber explosion back in January. And that's how we got to live, on top of the fact that my private insurance did cover daily treatment for about 2.5 years as well on my portion. But it was such a large scale cover up, and it began when I was 30 weeks pregnant. My son's treatments were all 100% out of pocket due to the large scale cover up. Either way, we weren't going to live if I did not take the actions that I did, do what I did, in the manner in which I did, we weren't going to live anyway. So, you know, even during that time when I barely managed to get there for those 4 or 5 hours that I did work those handfuls of times before COVID, I couldn't do anything else. I'd have to, you know, the person that drove would have to get me back home, and I basically had to stay laid out on the couch the entire time, the entire week, in order to come back one time the following weekend and do the same thing. I couldn't do anything else. I literally could not cook dinner, one load of laundry, one load of dishes, nothing. For 4.5 years that went on in that manner. I could not piece daily functioning back together because I was not receiving any proper care, no treatment, no rest, no recovery, no treatment. So I stayed laid out, you know, that entire time, because we were treating this as an outpatient situation when it's not an outpatient situation. It was a very extreme, life-threatening medical emergency, which was an inpatient injury. So during that time, my oldest had to do a lot of the housework and the cooking. I literally did not cook dinner at all for over 3 years. I did not do one load of laundry until I believe it was January of 2022. So 4 years went by before I did my first load of laundry, and I did my first load of dishes a couple months prior to that. So almost 4 years went by. And there was a 1.5 year period where I did have to have somebody work for me when I did finally start to try to go to work after COVID, because it was not possible to manage everything in the condition I was in, how fragile I was, how sick I was. I was still under daily treatment initially, and then had to drop it down to 2 days a week because it became 100% self-pay all around, due to the crimes that were going on at the Oxford Center. So that's its own separate set of crimes. But you can view my other videos on that as well, because I am all up in the mix of that at the same time. Everything else is going on in my life. There's many crimes going on in many different directions. And here I am trying to pick up the pieces all these years later. You know, it's been over 7 years since the injury became extreme. There's still no daily functioning. This has only been the first year that I've pretty much taken on everything myself, trying to run everything myself. Even then, I'm not even at 50% capacity of what I once was. So I just juggle everything and take the most urgent situation, and the ducks never get in a row. So that's still going on today. I am very sick. I have had to shelter in place twice in the last 15 months since Ford Motor Company keeps spilling gasoline where my house sits in Flat Rock, Michigan. There's numerous problems here. I finally did get a rented oxygen concentrator to get my home chamber up and running since the closing of the center back in January after the explosion. Because without the ongoing treatment, again, we're not going to live. We require treatment regularly to maintain staying alive and maintain moving forward. And so I did not get that concentrator until about 2 weeks ago. So here we were just overloading very slowly with the particles we were taking in from the most recent gas spill, and then anything we pick up along the way. If we are to travel from point A to point B and we pick up any little bits of carbon monoxide or any little bits of anything, it loads into our systems. It doesn't clear because of the extreme nature of our injuries, because the blood-brain barrier was completely blasted away. And we're toxic at a cellular level. So it's two problems. That's what makes it so extreme. Most people with carbon monoxide poisoning, it does not break through the brain in that manner, and if it does, they don't live to talk about it. So, you know, that is one of the issues we've been having. Treatment has not been being maintained for almost 2 years now. And I knew that from day one. I knew from what I went through from the time we finally began treatment. I was near death. We were both near death by the time we found the center. So we barely found it in time and began to treat, and it took years of everyday treatment and complete incapacitation, spending about half of a day, 10, 12 hours a day, sick by the toilet, unable to even get from room to room in my house that entire time, with 50, 60 severe symptoms at once, and a child suffering from the same thing. So you can view some of the videos on that. His behavior was out of control, and it remained that way for 4 years and 8 months. Before that began to clear once we crossed the first threshold. So from going from there to where we ended up making it to slowly over treating it over the course of every day for all those years, and then finally getting to a place where we were just maintaining with, I was doing twice a week. My son was doing once a week because it then became self-pay due to the crimes at the center. That's how we maintained it. I knew if that stopped at any time, we were going to be walking a very fine line between life and death, and it would only be a matter of time until we just weren't alive anymore, because we require the treatment to maintain what we do take in has to be removed, on top of the fact that we're still treating the initial overload and sealing the brain tissue shut from the initial injury. So there's numerous problems. And then once that happened, when treatment did stop, there's too many other people's actions involved, too many crimes of these large agencies and other people helping my mother commit these crimes against me. That's what wiped us out. And then due to being forced away from my home during the 2021 Ford gas spill, that caused further issues, and those were more crimes and more people involved, more agencies. So, it led to a place where we ended up getting forced to only work with the home chamber that we already have. It took some time of daily treatment to kind of jumpstart our systems to try to start processing what we had been taking in the past several months. I do know, based on what I've been through the past couple weeks, I wasn't far away from not being here anymore, for sure. If I had not gotten that concentrator when I did, it was just getting to a place where, any particle enters. Once you have that much in your system, on top of what the initial overload of carbon monoxide, what'll happen is any little amount gets added to that. It cuts off all oxygen to the brain immediately, goes to the brain first, and then floods the rest of the system. But since we were already so overloaded without removing what we had been taking in, one little bit gets added to it. That's how we end up dead. That's how I ended up dead on the floor at Walmart from the wildfire particles back in 2023. So, I was not far from that again, and I got the concentrator in time to start get things flowing. Even then, it takes some time because so much had loaded up, and then it settles in. It doesn't actually ever process. That we're just in a very extreme state. So we've been using it daily since I got that up and running. It's taken a lot just to get to where I am today from those last couple of weeks. But treatment was maintained all of those years. It was daily for almost, it was like 2.5 years daily, another 1.5 years of twice a week for me, once a week for my son, all that time. And then it completely stopped, which then put us at an extreme risk, an extreme state of suffering and struggling. All the symptoms become worsened and heightened, and the incapacitation level becomes, to a higher degree. And, this is going to be ongoing for the rest of our lives. And nobody has had compensated me whatsoever in any which direction at any time during this. I've paid my own way out of it and gotten us to where we are today myself. So you can view all the other videos on that. But there was finally a hearing this past week, and I was forced to take less than 1% of what I was owed and settle the matter with that. So you can kind of calculate many years of lost wages. Even then, the number they're going by isn't the correct number, and there's also a penalty involved when they don't produce the benefits and the treatment and the care. And then all of the medical, you add that up, you can kind of get a good idea in your head how much that would be. It's a lot. And I was forced to take a very small percentage due to all of these other crimes and the initial injury and what has all come out of this. I'm put in an extreme position right now where I was forced to take that number, or I'm going to lose everything that I have currently and everything I've already worked for and struggled to keep going all this time. Because it's destroyed all of my forms of income, everything that's gone on has destroyed all of my forms of income, and these are crimes. These are RICO crimes. There are direct individuals involved in this and direct agencies involved in this. With the position I've been left in, with what I've been dealing with recently, I was forced to take that number. But it says I'm not allowed to talk about, the matters of the settlement, whatever. The fact is, I've already released all those other videos prior to me signing that document, and I'm not taking them down. And those videos were posted before that document was ever signed and before I was offered anything, really. That's their bad. You can view all those other videos that I've already released and posted and filmed. They're all time-stamped and date-stamped. You can see on YouTube when they're uploaded. So that was the result of that. And due to the fallout of everything, because there's so many people and agencies involved, that's what I basically had to do. And then still going forward, I don't have the ability to rebuild in the manner in which I built things. I'm extremely limited. I still have periods of incapacitation, and I'm under Chapter 13 bankruptcy. So still things need to get flowing, but especially because we didn't have the chamber up and running, and then Ford spilled again where my house sits, that left it an even further issue recently. So now I have to pick up the pieces of each fallout. And that's why I was forced to just take the number and go. Otherwise, everything's going to be gone. I'm still not going to live either way you look at it in the long run, because I know exactly what has to happen going forward and the position that I'm in and how overloaded my system is. I'm very well aware because I had no medical history prior to the injury occurring. No medical history for 20 years. And an extreme overload like that, it's not something that's not noticeable. It was an extreme overload of carbon monoxide that broke through my brain. And then I lived to talk about it once I could finally string sentences together again. So, it's not like something that's not noticeable. These particles load up. They flow through my brain. They flow through my system. They stay there. They don't go away without treatment. Treatment has to be maintained. Not only that, but there's other methods I have to use along the way while doing treatment, while all this is going on. There's numerous things I have to do. So it's not just the hyperbaric oxygen treatment. There's several steps involved, because just the treatment alone still doesn't, you have to use other things to help it flow along and get removed along the way. And everything clears in cycles and loads. So I finally crossed the threshold where I cleared a load, like a whole cycle had gone on the past couple weeks, but it took some time. And I was incapacitated the majority of the time. There's nothing I can do about it. And again, I spent about 3.5 years completely incapacitated the whole time, literally. Not one load of laundry, not one load of dishes, not one dinner was cooked by me. So like I said, my oldest had to do a lot of that. Once chaos struck and my mother's crimes heightened during that period of time, and what she was causing others to do to me, and the extreme harassment and abuse that was going on, even though there's no contact between us and she's at a distance and she's not allowed anywhere near my home, she's using those around me to do all this. So once that happened, that's when I got the lady who worked for me to come back and work for me for about 1.5 years. At that time initially, she did come back last year when I was working on the home and help again. But I had to have her, she was kind of like an assistant, like a life assistant. Because not only did I had her doing numerous things. I had her driving for me. I had limited capacity. I still had to make the money. I still had to get to treatment. We were still working on the one house. So she served many purposes. She was keeping the dishes going, the laundry going. She oversaw like what was going on in my home. With my daughter was still here with her friends, and my youngest was still here. She kind of oversaw that. And then she'd have to drive for me. She'd have to run errands for me. I was at a very limited capacity in order to continue to produce income. So that's how I went about things, because I can produce large amounts if somebody else can take care of all these other things. And so it was enough to keep her bills going and mine. But once I reached the point where once too many crimes happened, too many large agencies and people got involved and destroyed everything to a certain degree further, I basically tanked out and started losing everything, because I'm only one person. I'm fighting against all these large agencies, all these people. So I had no choice but to, continue on with trying to keep us alive initially. My son and I, when we were forced away from our home initially, and then coming back, all that damage was done to our home in that 1 year. So, those are crimes as well. The police and the city and Ford, they're all involved in that as well. There's numerous problems with all of that and what's gone on. So the fallout from all that is still going on. The home is not completed. I'm still going back and forth with my homeowner's insurance, although currently they are working on finishing up the claim. They have had the documentation that they've needed for some months. And then once I stated that I had already released a video that I'm very sick, and if you don't give me what I'm rightfully owed, I'm not going to survive, and I don't have the ability to produce additional income because of the home not being put back together and the current spill that had been going on, and us being forced to shelter in place while we're taking in these particles that were getting into my home. in the majority of the home, I knew I wasn't far away from losing my life. So once I stated that, they jumped on board and started paying me what they owed me, and then wired me some of the money within 24 hours. Because it was very life-threatening. I knew it was getting to that point. They had had all these documents for months. They were provided the proper medical documents and what needed to happen, and then they still continued to play games. And funny, after I said that and mentioned that there's already all these other crimes involved and what has led to this, and that they are now participating in those crimes, once I said that and that our lives really are on the line, and they looked back at the documents they'd received months prior, they cut me that money through a wire transfer, some of it. So I'm still waiting on a check, and there's going to be at least 2 more, maybe 3 more checks to finish everything. But that should have never been going on. We should have never lost the ability to maintain treatment at any point during this, and it's all due to other people's actions, and people think it's a joke. People think that because of the way I look, or what I have, or the level I'm on in life, that I have this mental disorder, it's all made up, and I'm over exaggerating, and it's some type of joke. The way I'm forced to live, what I'm forced to deal with, it's not a fucking joke. I'm very sick. I live chronically sick. I live permanently injured. It's going to be that way for the rest of my life. It was at a very extreme degree some years ago, for several years. It's just not as extreme. It's still life-threatening. I'm still walking a very fine line between life and death, no matter how you look at it. But treatment has to be maintained for the rest of our lives. We have documentation stating that. So the fact that all these people and agencies were disregarding this paperwork, numerous sets of documents have been produced along the way, and everyone's just disregarding like that's not our reality when that is fully our reality. So, I'm sick of the bullshit. I'm sick of people's comments. I'm sick of, this person over here says this, that person over there says that, or you're looking at me and we're in the middle of a conversation, and then you try to go around my injury as if that's not real, which kept happening at the workers' comp hearing as well. It happens all the time. So this shit is sick. People are disgusting. Anyone involved in all this bullshit, you're all sick fucks anyway. Honestly, you'll see what happens to these people in the end. You will see. I promise you that. I don't even have to lift a finger. God does it all for me. Again, I'm one of the 144,000 chosen ones. I am an earth angel. I have come back from the dead twice without medical intervention. So I promise you'll see the end result of everything that's gone on and the people involved. I gotta get there. I gotta slowly take it step by step to explain everything in a proper manner. Because if I don't explain it in a certain order, nobody's going to understand what I'm talking about or where things actually are, or what has actually gone on. So that's why there's so many different categories under my channel, and the different, the different subjects I'll be talking about. It all ties together. So that's the reason for that, in case anybody's wondering. But I am kind of skipping around a little bit and releasing this video under this category, that video under that category. I'm just kind of skipping around at this point to kind of give everybody a general idea of these different situations going on at one time. Now, again, there is more than what I've talked about. I have not even gotten there yet. I need to get the main portions of what I'm talking about out first, and then I'll go back and I'll talk about those other things. And part of the reason for me not releasing some of that is some of it's still playing out as well in certain directions. So I will get back to all of that. Again, like I said, I have 2 to 4 times more on my plate than I can handle at any given time. And there's always 3 to 6 very serious situations going on at any given time. So as I'm talking about everything that I'm talking about in each video, there's even more going on than what I've even mentioned in those videos. So I do have to take it step by step, because regular people don't have the mental capacity to understand what I'm talking about or how severe the situation really is. I don't feel good. You can tell I don't feel good. You can tell by the way I look, I don't feel good. And you can tell in different videos. All the ups and downs and the roller coaster of symptoms I live with, waxing and waning symptoms all day, every day. There's gas particles, there's little bits of carbon monoxide everywhere. Not literally everywhere. Because I've had somebody mention, a couple people, be like, yeah, really? How are you still alive? Like, no, not literally everywhere. There are literally little bits of it all over the place. That is a problem for us. We do not process those particles. We have to avoid them. We cannot intentionally go into a place that has carbon monoxide, any amount of it. Legal amounts are 30 parts per million for an 8-hour period. We can't even have one, not even one, for a couple minutes. Our bodies do not process it. So we are going to come in contact, just being able to travel from point A to point B when we are able to go out and about in the world. Because there's periods of time where we can, if it's clear outside and there's no spills going on and such. And then geoengineering also plays a role in that as well. So, we can do that, but we have to make sure we maintain treatment, because those particles do not clear. They will just load up on top of what's already loaded in our systems. So that's the reason it has to be maintained. Plus, we still have to remove that initial overload. We have to keep taking steps forward to fix the initial injury. But because our injury is so extreme, and there's been so many re-injuries and exposures along the way, the length of time it's going to fully take to actually get us there, it's going to take the rest of my life. I'm never going to fully clear it. I already know, just based on what I've been through the past over 7 years now. It's not going to clear to that degree. And there's so many ups and downs and re-injuries that, that's the result. That's the way I'm forced to live. There's nothing I can do about it. It's been that way all along. It's not something new. I'm used to it. My son doesn't even realize that he lives a modified life, because it's been going on since birth. So he's not even aware that his life is modified, on top of the fact that the way he's homeschooled, it got more normalized due to COVID. So when he did finally start school, that was more of a normalized thing. And then, the type of house we live in that he grew up in, it's really big. He's not really realizing other people don't live like that regularly. And, he's got a lot of space, and, it's not like we're clustered into one small house. It's different because the house is so big. So he doesn't feel like his life is modified or realize how modified it actually is. And we've talked about this, because it didn't dawn on me until I started filming the videos last year, that he's not even aware that his life is modified, because he's been living that way his whole life. But that's all due to my life's work prior to the injury. So if I had not had those 20 years prior of hard work that I'd put in, no, we wouldn't have been at this place in life to be where we are, for him to not even realize his life is as modified as it is. So there's numerous factors here. But yeah, I just wanted to give an update on what happened with the workers' comp situation. There's a lot of people that have a lot of bad karma. I will say that. Quite a few. And I'm sure you'll see, just based on what happened to me and the people involved and what all has gone on just in this past week. I promise you will see, because it'll probably be stuff that goes down on the news. If you have not already noticed, there's already other situations and arrests, and these people are going to be spending the rest of their lives in prison who messed with me when I was near death. So people laughing and thinking this is a joke, trying to go around my injury and act like you didn't cause this injury, and then try to go around it and talk to me like my reality isn't my reality. There's a whole group of them that were there this past week. There, you watch. I promise you, you'll see. You'll see what happens to those people. God takes care of that shit for me. I don't even have to lift a finger. I have a whole team of spirit guides, ancestors, angels, archangels, whoever. They watch over me. I don't know who's doing what. I'm busy carrying out what I absolutely have to get through each day. And in the background, these people who really do me wrong in that manner, there's been at least 10 people who've gone to prison at this point. And then the people at the beginning of my injury, you see that it's ongoing right now. The owner of the facility is behind bars, and so is the lady who was extorting me for the tens of thousands of dollars. She's been behind bars for almost a year. And there is going to be more pending charges because of what has happened with me regarding that situation and what was going on at the center and those crimes. There's other crimes beyond me, but there is a separate set of crimes that happened just with me. So there will be further charges. The owner will be spending the rest of her life in prison. So if that's what happened without me lifting a finger, I can only imagine what's going to happen to the people who've caused my injury and played a role in the cover-up and not providing proper compensation or treatment when it was an extreme medical emergency, or any role they played along the way, and all the other individuals talking shit along the way. I can only imagine what's going to happen to those people. So the proof is in the pudding. You can view the hyperbaric oxygen explosion, and the owner and Casey Diskin, who's already behind bars, they were the ones directly involved in the crimes and extorting me for the money while I was near death and I couldn't string sentences together, and screaming in my face that I need to pay cash when I have private insurance willing to pay, and it's not their responsibility, but they are willing to pay, and it's a medical emergency, and yet they still required I give them all this cash. And again, if I had not been self-employed, I wouldn't have been able to pull that off and play their game, and we still would not have lived. I had no choice. So yeah, during those times before COVID, when I did work those couple of handfuls of times, I had no choice, or we weren't going to live anyway. That's why I did what I did. But I also couldn't do anything else, and it was an illusion because you can't see the injury. You can't see the carbon monoxide loaded in my cells. You don't see it flowing up and down in my brain, in my arms, my legs, in my chest. You don't see it flowing through my whole system. You don't see any of the other particles I'm taking in flowing through my system. It's internal. But they're measurable gases that you can measure in there. And if I were to die, you could cut my brain open. The majority of it will be in my brain, but you can find it in my system and in my cells. If I die and you do an autopsy, you'll find it. So, I'm just going to put that shit out there because there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be facing a lot of bad karma for what the role they played and what has gone on. And you'll see, just like I said, you can look up the hyperbaric explosion and the charges of all those individuals and what has happened with Casey Diskin and Tamala Peterson. Look what's happened to them. They're the ones, they played an additional role in what was already going in a very extreme situation that was already very life-threatening and very extreme, in an extreme state of suffering for quite some time, well over a year at this point, when all that began, and it went on for 2 years. So if that's what happened to them over that, I can only imagine what's going to happen to the rest of the people who've played a role in all this. And I did tell them that in court. So you'll see, I promise you will see something is going to happen to those individuals, and it will be all over the news, I'm sure, at some point. Now, yeah, like I call things in advance. So if you haven't noticed that yet, I do. You'll see. I'll be back with another one. Thanks. Bye.